The air conditioning in the secure conference room at the Naval Special Warfare Command was humming with a low, aggressive drone. It was known as the Icebox, a room kept at a shivering 65 degrees to protect the banks of classified servers lining the far wall. But the temperature wasn't the only thing that made the room cold. It was the men sitting around the long mahogany table. At the head of the table sat Admiral Richard Razor Kincaid. He was a man who took up space even when he was sitting still. 55 years old, with a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled out of granite and a buzz cut that was sharp enough to sand wood. He was a legend in the Navy SEAL community, a man with a chest full of ribbons and a reputation for eating junior officers for breakfast. Surrounding him were 12 of the military's finest tactical minds, commanders, captains, and lieutenants. They were young, hungry, and terrified of making a mistake in front of the Razor. They were there to review Operation Jungle Ghost, a high-stakes simulation designed to test the next generation of warfare strategies. Moving silently around the perimeter of this room was Beatrice. Beatrice was 64 years old. She had soft, curly gray hair that she kept pinned back in a sensible bun. Her shoulders were slightly rounded, the result of decades of hard work and gravity. She wore thick bifocals that magnified her hazel eyes, giving her a perpetually surprised and gentle expression. She wore the standard-issue blue smock of the civilian support staff, a uniform that rendered her effectively invisible to the warriors in the room. Her job was simple: keep the coffee hot, keep the water pitchers full, keep the trash cans empty, and most importantly, do not exist. She moved with a slow, deliberate shuffle, her orthopedic shoes squeaking faintly on the polished linoleum floor. Her knees ached today, a deep, throbbing ache that warned of rain coming in off the Pacific, but she pushed through it. She approached the sideboard to replace a glass pot of dark roast coffee. Click! The sound of the glass pot hitting the warmer was barely audible. It was a soft sound, like a pebble hitting a pond. But to Admiral Kincaid, it sounded like a gunshot. He stopped mid-sentence. He didn't turn his head. He just stopped talking, and the silence that followed was heavier than the air conditioning. "Do you mind?" Kincaid snapped. He cast a sharp glare over his shoulder, his eyes locking onto the blue smock. Beatrice froze. Her hand was still on the handle of the coffee pot. She clutched it tight, her knuckles turning white. "I apologize, Admiral. I was just refreshing the roast for the gentlemen." "We didn't ask for a refresh," Kincaid said, his voice low and dangerous. "We asked for silence. You are shuffling around back there like a zombie in a horror movie. It's distracting. We are trying to plan a war here." A few of the younger officers chuckled. It was a nervous sound, a way to align themselves with the alpha in the room. They didn't really think it was funny, but they knew better than to not laugh when the Admiral made a joke. Beatrice looked down at her shoes. She took a slow breath. "I'll be finished in a moment, sir." Kincaid spun his chair around fully now. He decided he needed a break from the stress of the briefing, and Beatrice was the perfect target to vent some steam. He looked her up and down, taking in the blue smock, the gray hair, and the plastic ID badge that simply read Logistics L1. "You know," Kincaid said, leaning back and crossing his powerful arms over his chest, "you've been in and out of this room all morning. In, out, shuffle, shuffle. This is a classified briefing, Beatrice. Top secret clearance is required just to breathe this recycled air. Who signed off on you?" "Security Chief Miller, sir," Beatrice replied softly. She didn't make eye contact. "I've held a maintenance clearance for this building for 20 years. Kincaid smirked. It was a cruel expression. "Clearance to what? Mop the floors, scrub the latrines?" The laughter in the room grew louder. Kincaid smiled, enjoying the audience. He felt big. He felt in control. "I'm just curious," Kincaid continued, riding the wave of his own arrogance. "We've got highly decorated warriors in this room, men who have bled for this country, men who have jumped out of planes at 30,000 feet. In this room, rank is the currency we trade in. So tell me, coffee lady, what's yours? Do you have a rank? Or do you just have a bucket?" Beatrice finished wiping a stray drop of coffee from the counter. She folded her rag with precise, slow movements. She placed it in her apron pocket. She didn't look angry. She didn't look humiliated. She looked patient. She looked like a grandmother dealing with a rude toddler in a grocery store. She finally looked up, meeting Kincaid's gaze through her thick glasses. "No rank, Admiral," she said quietly. "Just civilian staff." "Figures," Kincaid scoffed, turning back to the table. "Well, civilian staff, try to make yourself invisible. We're discussing complex warfare, not a church bake sale. If I hear that pot click again, you're out. Understood. Understood, Admiral, Beatrice said. She retreated to the far corner of the room, taking a seat on a small, metal folding chair reserved for the help. She reached into her canvas tote bag and pulled out a knitting project, a ball of red wool and 2 wooden needles. She sat quietly, her needles moving in a rhythmic, silent dance, while the men turned their backs on her to discuss the business of death. All right, focus up, Kincaid barked, clapping his hands together. Let's run the simulation, Scenario 4, the extraction. The massive screen at the front of the room lit up. It displayed a high-resolution tactical map of a dense green hell, a jungle in Southeast Asia. This was Red Cell Training, a sophisticated computer simulation designed to test new strategies against historical, impossible scenarios. The objective was simple on paper, but brutal in practice. Extract a high-value target, HVT, from a fortified compound deep within a triple canopy jungle. The compound was surrounded by an enemy guerrilla force known for lethal traps, ambushes, and patience. Alpha Team, approach from the river, Kincaid ordered, pointing at the blue line snaking through the map. Use thermal drones to identify the perimeter guards. We go in quiet. The simulation began. On the screen, small blue dots representing the Navy SEAL team moved inward from the riverbank. Sir, a young lieutenant spoke up, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he monitored the data. Thermal is washing out. The ambient temperature of the jungle floor is 95 degrees. The humidity is 100%. The sensors can't distinguish body heat from the vegetation. The jungle is too hot. Switch to motion trackers, Kincaid commanded, not missing a beat. If they move, we see them. Motion trackers are useless, sir, the lieutenant replied, panic creeping into his voice. The jungle is alive. Monkeys, wind, falling branches. It's creating too much noise. The sensors are lighting up everywhere. We're flying blind. On the screen, the blue dots halted. They were stuck in the mud. Suddenly, 3 of the dots turned flashing red. Casualty, casualty, casualty. What happened? Kincaid demanded, standing up. Tripwires, sir, the lieutenant said, his face pale. They walked right into a localized minefield. They didn't even see it. The vegetation concealed the wires. Reset, Kincaid slammed his hand on the table, making the water pitchers shake. Sloppy, that was sloppy. Go again, aerial insertion. We dropped them right on top, fast rope into the courtyard. The simulation reset. The blue dots appeared over the compound this time, descending from the sky. Helicopters taking fire, the operator shouted. RPGs from the tree line. We lost the bird. Alpha Team is down. Total loss. Kincaid's face turned a deep shade of red. This is ridiculous. The enemy AI is cheating. They can't see through that canopy any better than we can. How are they targeting the choppers? They ran the simulation 3 more times. River approach, ambush by boats hiding in the mangroves. Night approach, the enemy used specialized tracking dogs that smelled the team before they even breached the perimeter. Sniper support, no lines of sight through the dense trees. For 2 hours, the finest military minds in the Navy threw modern technology at the jungle. They threw drones, satellites, and advanced weaponry at the problem. And for 2 hours, the jungle chewed them up and spit them out. The mood in the room shifted. The arrogance was gone, replaced by frustration and then desperation. Kincaid was sweating through his starch-stiff uniform. This simulation was part of his evaluation for a promotion to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Failing against a computer was not an option. It was embarrassing. It's impossible, Kincaid muttered, loosening his tie for the first time. The perimeter is impenetrable. We can't get close without alerting the entire region. The scenario is broken. From the back corner of the room, the soft, rhythmic clicking of knitting needles stopped. It's not impenetrable, a soft voice said. The silence in the room was instant. Kincaid whipped his head around. Beatrice was looking at the screen over the rim of her bifocals, her knitting resting in her lap. Excuse me, Kincaid snapped, his eyes narrowing. Did you say something, coffee lady? Beatrice stood up slowly. She placed her knitting in her bag. She smoothed the front of her blue smock. I said it's not impenetrable, Admiral, she repeated, her voice steady. But you're trying to fight the jungle. You can't fight it. You have to become it. Become it? Kincaid laughed, a harsh, barking sound that lacked any real humor. What is this, a philosophy class? Sit down, Beatrice. We don't need fortune cookie wisdom right now. You're triggering the defenses because you're moving like soldiers, Beatrice continued, ignoring his order. She walked closer to the table, her step surprisingly light. You're marching, you're breaking branches, you smell like soap and gun oil and aggression. The tracking dog smelled you 3 miles out. You're loud. And how would you know what the dog smelled? Kincaid challenged, stepping toward her. Have you ever been near a combat zone, Beatrice, or is your experience limited to fighting dust bunnies? I know what they smelled because I know that compound, Beatrice said calmly. She stopped at the edge of the table. And I know the man who built it. The room went dead silent. The air conditioning seemed to get louder. The officers looked from the Admiral to the old woman in the blue smock. You know the compound? Kincaid asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. From where? A movie, a documentary. This simulation, Beatrice said, lifting a trembling hand to point at the screen. It's not a random map. It's based on the Lang Vey extraction of 1972, isn't it? The unauthorized mission into Cambodia. Kincaid stiffened. His posture changed instantly. That mission was highly classified. It was used for internal training only. The details were redacted from every public record. It officially never happened. How do you know about Lang Vey? Kincaid asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Who told you that name? Because the layout is wrong, Beatrice said, ignoring the threat in his tone. The simulation has the guard towers facing outward toward the jungle, but General Cao didn't build them facing out. He built them facing in. Why would he do that? A young captain asked, leaning forward, unable to stop his curiosity. To keep his own men from running, Beatrice said, her eyes distant. He was paranoid. He ruled by fear. If you approach from the North Ridge, the towers have a blind spot because the guards are watching the prisoners, not the trees. But you have to crawl. Crawl, Kincaid scoffed. That's 5 miles of swamp water. 7 miles, Beatrice corrected him. And yes, you crawl. You cover yourself in mud to mask the heat and the scent. You move only when the wind blows to hide the sound of the grass moving. You eat raw grubs because opening a ration pack makes too much noise. It takes 3 days. 3 days, Kincaid shook his head. We don't have 3 days. The target will be moved, the intel says. The target isn't going anywhere, Beatrice cut him off. General Cao keeps his prizes. He likes to play with them. He won't move the prisoner until he breaks him. There was a darkness in her voice that sent a chill through the room. It wasn't the voice of a grandmother anymore. It was cold, flat, and devoid of emotion. It was the voice of someone who had seen things that nightmares are made of. Kincaid looked at her closely. For the first time, he really looked at her. He noticed a scar on her neck just below the collar of her blue smock. It was faint, old, white against her skin, but jagged. It looked like the mark of a knife. You seem to have a lot of opinions for a civilian, Kincaid said, trying to regain control of the room. But opinions don't win battles. Data does, and my data says that route is suicide. Your data just got your team killed 5 times, Admiral, Beatrice said. She looked him in the eye. Give me the controls. Excuse me. Give me the operator's seat, Beatrice said. I'll show you how to get them out. Kincaid hesitated. It was absurd. It was insane. A 64-year-old cleaning lady running a Tier 1 military simulation. If anyone from the Pentagon walked in, he would be laughed out of the service. But his team was dead. He had failed 5 times, and there was something about her confidence. It wasn't arrogance, it was absolute certainty. Let her try, sir, the operator whispered, looking up from his console. We're out of ideas. What do we have to lose? Kincaid gritted his teeth. He looked at the failed mission screen. Fine, humor her. Let's watch the grandmother play video games. Don't break anything, Beatrice. Beatrice sat in the high-tech leather chair. It swallowed her small frame. She adjusted her bifocals. She didn't look at the keyboard. Her hands found the tactical interface instinctively. Her fingers, which looked arthritic and stiff just moments ago, moved with surprising speed and fluidity. Reset simulation, she commanded. Her voice was clear and sharp. Loadout change, drop the body armor, drop the heavy rifles, drop the helmets. Are you insane? Kincaid shouted. You're sending them in naked. They'll be slaughtered by the first patrol. Armor makes noise, Beatrice said without looking up. Rifles get caught on vines. Helmets shine in the moonlight. Speed and silence are the only armor they have. Give them pistols and knives. She adjusted the team's path. Instead of the river or the air or the clearings, she plotted a jagged, nonsensical line through the densest, blackest part of the swamp, the black zone on the map. "That's suicide," the captain whispered. "That's Viper territory, the ground is infested." "The Vipers sleep during the heat of the day if you don't disturb the ground vibration," Beatrice muttered, her eyes glued to the screen. "Alpha team prone, move rate 1 meter per minute. Do not engage, do not stand up." On the screen, the blue dots moved agonizingly slow. The simulation fast-forwarded the time. Hours passed in minutes on the clock. The enemy patrols walked right past them. The dogs sniffed the air and whined, confusing the mud-covered seals for the swamp itself. The thermal satellites showed nothing but the cool mud. "They're inside the perimeter," the operator whispered, stunned. "They didn't trip a single sensor. They are literally ghosts." "Now," Beatrice said, "the breach, don't use the door is rigged with C4. Cow always rigs the doors." "How do you enter?" Kincaid asked, watching intently, his arms uncrossed. "The drainage pipe," Beatrice said. "It flows out from the kitchen. It's 18 inches wide. It's filled with offal, rot, and waste, but it leads right to the basement cells." She guided the digital team into the pipe. Kincaid grimaced. It was a filthy, degrading way to enter a fight. It was humiliating, but it worked. The team emerged in the cell block covered in filth. They neutralized the 2 guards silently with knives before they could reach their radios. They secured the high-value target. "Extraction," Kincaid said. "Now you have to fight your way out. Call in the air support." "No," Beatrice said firmly. "No guns. We leave the way we came. The guards won't check the cells until shift change at dawn. We have 4 hours." The team moved back out through the pipe, dragging the injured HVT. They crawled back through the swamp. They vanished into the jungle. "Mission success. CASULTIS, 0. Detection, 0. The screen flashed green. It was a perfect score. The room was dead silent. The officers stared at Beatrice. She stood up slowly, her knees popping audibly. She smoothed her blue smock. She looked tired. "Coffee's getting cold," she said quietly. She walked back to the coffee pot as if nothing had happened. Kincaid stood frozen. He felt a strange sensation in his chest, humility. It was foreign to him. He watched the woman in the orthopedic shoes shuffle back to her corner. He walked over to the coffee station, blocking her path. "Who are you?" Kincaid asked. It wasn't a demand this time. It was a question asked with genuine fear and awe. "I told you," Beatrice said, not looking up, scrubbing a spot on the counter. "I'm Beatrice. I work in logistics." "Bull," Kincaid whispered. "You knew about the drainage pipe. You knew about the guard towers facing in. That wasn't in the briefing. That wasn't in the history books. That mission, the Lang Vei mission. The records say it was a failure. They say the team never made it in." Beatrice stopped scrubbing. She took off her glasses and cleaned them on her smock. Without the thick lenses, her eyes were sharp. They were predatory. They were ancient. "The history books are written by the men who stand on the podiums, Admiral," she said softly. "They aren't written by the people crawling in the mud, and certainly not by the failures." "You were there," Kincaid realized. The puzzle pieces were clicking together. "In 72, but there were no women in the SEAL teams. There were no women in combat. It was illegal." "Not officially," Beatrice said. "But the CIA needed someone small, someone who could move through the tunnels where the big American boys got stuck, someone who didn't look like a soldier, someone who looked like a peasant or a refugee." Kincaid's mind raced. He remembered a rumor from his days at the academy, a ghost story told by the old instructors around campfires, a story about a solitary operative in Cambodia who wiped out entire terrorist cells without firing a shot. An operative who moved so quietly the locals believed they were a forest spirit. "They called you something," Kincaid whispered. "In the stories, the call sign." Beatrice put her glasses back on. The predator vanished, replaced by the grandmother. But Kincaid saw the shadow now. "Codenames are for children playing games, Admiral," she said. "Shadow Panther," Kincaid said. The name hung in the air like smoke. "That was you. You're the Shadow Panther." The other officers gasped. A few stood up. The Shadow Panther was a myth, a legend of Black Ops, the deadliest assassin the agency had ever disavowed. Beatrice picked up the empty coffee pot. She looked Kincaid in the eye. "The Panther died in 1975, Admiral," she said. "She retired. She got married to a plumber. She had 2 sons. She grew old. She got arthritis in her knees from crawling through 7 miles of swamp. "You're a janitor," Kincaid said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're a GS4 logistics clerk making minimum wage. You could be running the Pentagon. You could be teaching at the War College." "I don't like the noise," Beatrice said. "And I don't like the lies. I like the quiet. I like making sure the boys have hot coffee, and I like going home to my cat." Kincaid looked at the woman he had mocked. He had asked for her rank. He had joked about her mopping floors. He had treated her like furniture. He realized now that she didn't need a rank. Rank was a hierarchy for mortals. She was something else entirely. She was a survivor. Kincaid started, but his throat was dry. He cleared it. "I apologize for my comments earlier about the rank, about the visibility. I was out of line." Beatrice smiled. It was a kind smile, but there was steel behind it. "You asked for my rank, Admiral," she said. "If you must know, when I left the agency, they offered me a commendation, equivalent to a full bird colonel. They wanted to give me a medal." Kincaid stood straighter. "But I turned it down," she added, "because medals shine and things that shine get seen, and if you're seen, you're dead." She patted the Admiral on the arm, a gesture that would have gotten anyone else in that room court-martialed. But Kincaid didn't flinch. He leaned into it. "Keep your head down, Razor," she said, using his call sign. "And check your 6. The jungle doesn't care how many stars you wear on your collar. It only cares if you're quiet." Beatrice walked toward the door, carrying the empty pot. She moved slowly, her shoes squeaking. "Room attention," Kincaid bellowed. It was instinct. It was a command that bypassed the brain and went straight to the spine. The 12 officers jumped to their feet, snapping their bodies rigid, heels clicking together. Kincaid stood at attention. He didn't salute. She was a civilian, technically, and saluting a civilian was against regulation. But he stood in the position of supreme respect, eyes locked forward, chin up, acknowledging a superior warrior. Beatrice paused at the heavy door. She looked back at the room of frozen soldiers. She saw the fear, the respect, and the awe. She gave a small, dismissive wave of her hand. "As you were," she said. She walked out into the hallway. The heavy door clicked shut. The room remained silent for a long time. The hum of the servers was the only sound. Finally, the young captain broke the silence. "Sir, do we really run the simulation again?" Kincaid looked at the screen, at the successful green text that a grandmother had earned in 10 minutes. He looked at the coffee pot she had left behind. "No," Kincaid said quietly. "We're done for the day. Wipe the logs, and someone get down to security." "Sir?" "I want Beatrice's clearance level upgraded to omnidirectional," Kincaid ordered. "She goes where she wants, and get her a comfortable chair, a real one with a cushion." "Yes, sir." Kincaid sat down, staring at his empty coffee cup. He took a sip. It was cold, but he drank it anyway. He realized he would never look at the cleaning staff the same way again. He had just met the Shadow Panther, and he was lucky, damn lucky, that she had only served him coffee and not justice.